it's that classic line. What is it? People overestimate the impact in the short term and they underestimate it in the long term, right? Like, so we got this thing like a week ago, and then the markets didn't react how everyone thought they would, right? Kind of reminds me of the spot Bitcoin ETFs. I don't know if you remember that, but like that got announced, and then it like dumped for like 2 weeks to a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone was like, "Oh, you see, it doesn't matter," and then it really did over the long term. And this is the same kind of thing to me, right? So like, yeah, the markets didn't pump immediately. There's some other stuff going on, but in the long term, like a year, 2, 3 years, this is probably going to have a major effect.
Welcome back to Bitcoin.com's Token Narratives, where we discuss the biggest stories shaping the Bitcoin and cryptoverse. My name is Graham Stone, Bitcoin.com marketing operations lead and high priest of the Temple of Hopium. Joining us this week are news and research gigabrain, Mr. David Sensel, and calls him like he sees him, Bitcoin.com CEO Corbin Fraser. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you doing today?
Yeah, TGIF.
That's right. What's going to happen this weekend in the markets? I wonder. The weekends have been pretty interesting.
I have been unable to trade this market. I'm just watching it all unfold.
All right. Well,
me too, actually. Me too.
Diving right into it, we have an historic $5.5 trillion TradFi market crash since February. The S&P is down around 10% over the last month as investors grapple with the new economic goals of the Trump administration, which seem to revolve around a focus on helping out Main Street, potentially at the expense of Wall Street, i.e., stock market and other asset prices. Also likely contributing to the sell-off in TradFi is the chaos surrounding the Trump administration's tariff policies. Now, whether you think those policies are good or bad in the long term, or maybe you think they're just a negotiation tactic, the fact is they're causing uncertainty, and we all know markets don't like uncertainty. So as it relates to Bitcoin and crypto, we have, of course, seen a major sell-off in all assets in the Bitcoin and crypto realm, pretty much in line with the sell-off in TradFi markets. From the Pico top on Inauguration Day, pretty much exactly, a little bit after that, to where Bitcoin is now, so that let's say 110K to where Bitcoin is now at around 80K. The price is down around 30%. Then we have the fear and greed index, which is kind of a fun thing. It's not too serious, but it is in fear territory right now at 27 out of 100. This is a sentiment indicator, and it has been in the extreme fear territory for several days over the last month. Then we have some other data points, such as crypto fund outflows. So let me see if I can pull up here's the crypto fund outflows chart, which is showing record outflows. Crypto fund outflows. David, you brought this up. What exactly does that mean? Do you know? Crypto fund outflows.
As far as I can tell, this is talking about how institutions are putting in money or taking money out of crypto related, I don't know, vehicles like ETFs and even into,
so
I guess,
it might include
it
might include the ETF outflows, which also have been in record negative territory. Although I would point out that the outflows seem to be tapering off a bit here.
Yeah, I think this includes that and others. But this is from the Bank of America, so it's not just. I think this is, and it says like global investment strategy, so it's probably everything institutions touch related to crypto. And
Minus
as it
3,000 million. 3,000 million. So
yeah,
that's
that sounds about right. Yeah,
30 billion.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Little dip. So, having set the stage here, I'd love to get your opinions on where we're at and where we're going. Maybe I missed something in my stage setting as well, so feel free to chime in there.
Well, one thing
my first
I saw
question,
this morning,
yeah, go ahead.
Gold pumping, gold ripping. So
Yeah,
I think the rocky assets, everyone's like, what are we doing? This whole this whole game, it seems to be a little bit shaky for a lot of folks. So just sitting it out into some maybe safer assets, some boring metals. Peter Schiff celebrating on Twitter, probably.
yeah, I did actually. I noticed that Peter Schiff is streaming right now.
Celebrating.
He's live streaming
all-time high.
Although, yeah, I will note that
videos like we did at 100K.
We have double the currently we do have double the viewers of Peter Schiff. So
yeah,
he's a boomer.
I like Peter Schiff. Truthfully, I think he's an entertaining guy. I like him.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that you could have included would be like stablecoin supply, right? Like and stablecoin supply actually looks pretty decent, right? The circulating supply of stables in crypto. So that's not a negative thing. So you say one positive one positive aspect in the sea of red is
I mean it's a signal that there's dry gunpowder in the sidelines. So
yeah,
people are waiting, right? Everyone's just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. I think we all expected perhaps more up momentum with the US being so hyper bullish on Bitcoin and like a Bitcoin administration and all these things, but largely has turned into a bit of a sell the news event. And yeah, I mean, like that could also be just weighted more heavily due to the tariff wars, the threats, the saber rattling. Yeah.
Yep. And I think so overall I'm still like relatively bullish. I mean, I think we're going to be in for some pain here for a bit. That's kind of how I feel now. Maybe Q2 into Q3 is going to be more of this, just kind of red
noticed,
pain. But
a lot of people have turned into long-term investors.
my soul bag is now a long-term investment for sure.
Yeah, that one hurt. It was shocking how quick that one went down. So that was fun. I think the meme meta just vibes changed really quickly. And Solana took a bit of a lick. Ethereum though, God, it's just max pain.
Oh yeah, I mean it's truly, how long has this been a running joke with us and even other podcasts that it's like, is this the bottom? It's been like that for like what? The entire time we've done this podcast? Like the entire time. Ethereum has been down only, oh, this has to be the bottom now. Sentiment can't get worse. And it's only gotten worse.
Well, there was a tweet from I think it's the Blockchair guys and the CEO of Blockchair, Nikita, and he was kind of saying how Ethereum went from being like ultrasound money and a world computer, and it's now just a blob. It's just a blob storage unit. It's just there's nothing really happening there. Everything's moved on to other projects, and I think when I look at the market cap of some of these other projects, it does make me think like that number 2 spot, that could change. It's changed before. It could change again in the future. And I'm also kind of the belief that even the number 1 spot could change in the future. But like right now, I think this cycle, that's probably not happening. Bitcoin's going to stay the godfather, for quite some time here. But Ethereum, I think that one's kind of the most at risk in terms of like the top 5 positions on, be that CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap, or markets.bitcoin.com or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I like this this tweet from Scoopy Trooples. What is my purpose? And it turns out that Ethereum's only purpose is just to send stable coins, which
It's
it doesn't
also
even do that very well. Actually, Tron seems to be the main stable coin sending network.
It is by far, but also I think the main use case for Ethereum is for the Ethereum Foundation to sell their ETH to pay for to pay for more research.
Don't FUD what little ETH I still have, David, please.
I mean,
Ethereum Foundation, they're going to figure it all out, guys. Don't worry.
Do you remember that tweet? That was, I don't know if we covered it here, but it was a couple months ago where the foundation was getting flack because they're like, look, the Solana Foundation, they actually use the network, right? And then some ETH Foundation guy was like, we use Ethereum.
Yeah.
We pay salaries in Ethereum. We pay for conferences in Ethereum. And all three, he gave 3 use cases, and all of them were in effect selling ETH. Yeah, selling ETH.
Yeah. I think the problem with Ethereum is the autism level there is perhaps too high. They don't have enough slightly less autistic people in the trenches with them to steer them away from saying stupid shit like that, or to just do some like sane things like, I don't know, use DeFi. Like had Ethereum and the Ethereum Foundation been a little bit more supportive from DeFi summer onwards in terms of like promoting and adopting and using all of the cool stuff happening, whether that's like lending borrowing protocols or, leverage tokens or rebase tokens or, non-US pegged stable coins and like promoted all the cool stuff happening on the smart contract level, maybe they would have maintained more of the Ethereum meta, but they were so like, they were trying to be extremely neutral. And as a result, they ended up just like pissing away the opportunity to be the smart contract layer and to be this like innovative layer. And now things are moving on to other more supportive chains where they get some, whether that's financial support or marketing support or community support. But like if the people building on your chain are getting talked down by, or even just not supported and ignored by the foundation level, or the talking heads, the influencers, the KOLs, then you're just going to be like, all right, if I go hang over in the Solana world, they're going to, Ansem's going to tweet about me, or someone's going to tell me what a good boy I am for launching a cool project. And, sometimes feels good is enough to keep people moving and keep the vibes kind of growing. Yeah.
Did you guys see Frederick, BTCTN news writer? He was at ETH Denver, and he was asking just like people at the conference, like what the Ethereum leadership should focus on. There's a short little video. It's like 2 minutes, 3-minute video, but I thought that captured kind of the vibe of people building in the space pretty well, because pretty much everybody had a criticism. And I know in the past, like in what's it called, DevCon in Bangkok, even from then, that was November to now, people were more constructive. Like when I talked to people, and I felt like when Frederick was asking people at ETH Denver, everyone had an opinion this time around. Like yeah, they need to do something, they need to change. And I don't know, I thought that was telling that even the devs now are like, yeah, you got to do something. Everything is not great. Do something.
I think the most depressing part about all of this is that like history is repeating itself. This happened in the Bitcoin space as well. You had everyone trying to build cool stuff on Bitcoin and being talked down, insulted. What are you doing using your Bitcoin? You're just adding to sell pressure. Don't do anything with Bitcoin. This thing is a storage of value. This isn't a medium of exchange. Don't try to innovate. Don't try to add. Don't try to use the script language to like do stuff with Bitcoin. Just stack sats and hodl, guys. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And all these people that were trying to build interesting, cool, progressively tech forward blockchain innovations ended up moving to Ethereum. And then they got the exact same treatment over the long term. And now they're like, all right, I guess we'll go somewhere else. So like the builder class is just, they're transient. And if you don't maintain that support, they're just going to move on. I'm like, why would you keep building on somewhere where you're kind of treated somewhat hostilely?
Yeah. I agree. But overall, I think, I mean, I don't look at my, I'm not looking at my portfolio, right? I'm not looking at my, not looking at the number go down.
That's a bad.
No. Yeah. No. And I think probably that'll continue for maybe Q2. So, I mean, I don't know what you guys feel in terms of like that, but that's kind of how I feel.
Okay, well, going back to sort of the overall market, moving away from just shitting on Ethereum as we love to do. So I think a question to ask here might be, will Bitcoin and crypto, or maybe just Bitcoin and not crypto, continue to be tightly, or maybe the other way around. Will it be will this space continue to be tightly correlated with equities, the TradFi, the sentiment shifts in TradFi? Because that seems what's happening right now. Now, I've heard this argument recently.
It always has been.
It always has been. But also, I've heard this. So it seems like right now what's happening with U.S., there seems to be like a shift away from U.S. equities, right, to possibly, equities in emerging markets or other markets, right? Europe has done well since the start of the year, even Japan, a few other places. And so some people are saying like, okay, money's just, the stock market, the equities in the US it's overvalued. It's been overvalued for too long. It's time to start shifting to other markets. Now, my question is, in that scenario, you could argue that like Bitcoin and crypto, but maybe especially Bitcoin, is another market. So it doesn't necessarily have to fall along with US equities if US equities continue to drop another 10, 20%, it's possible that Bitcoin won't. Is there any credence to that argument, or is that just pure hopium?
So, yeah, I mean, I think we've all been waiting for like a decoupling, right? It's never happened. It's like, there's always been this theory that, like Bitcoin's going to be a better bet than the S&P, or, it's not going to trade with the S&P this cycle, and then it does. And then you're like, oh, okay, we're just another risk asset, apparently. But I do wonder if the treasury meta and the game theory around governments and strategic, what are they calling it? Strategic Bitcoin reserves. If that's going to be the thing that perhaps supports more inflows and breaks that habit of S&P and Bitcoin trending so well together. But I guess that would be the only thing I could see that would perhaps drive the volume to perhaps change that. Otherwise, it's pure, retail adoption growth, which it's going to be slower. We might not see that for another 10, 20 years. And then you start getting into these other questions related to the security budget and things like that. But
yeah, I still see Bitcoin as it's small, basically, and it's still considered like a tech play, for better or for worse. And so, at least until it's either much bigger in terms of its overall market cap, or you get way more institutional adoption, which institutional adoption, as I think Corbin was alluding to, is the way that they buy things is, or the way that they like trade these things is much different than like retail or even some of these hedge funds or shorter time horizon players. That will dampen volatility. But right now, they don't have very much exposure to Bitcoin, and so I don't see it changing anytime soon. Now, again, it could even be within 5 years, right? Like if you get like an arms race where nations and major institutions like pension funds and stuff start piling into Bitcoin, they're not gonna be selling like what's it called, paper handed retail losers. So that could start to change it, but yeah, I don't think we're there yet, and it doesn't seem like we're that close either. Now, all the other crypto stuff like Ethereum and Solana and all that, I mean, that is tech. That's just tech, right? So that's going to perform just like tech, and I don't think it'll ever not, right? It'll always perform like tech.
Yeah. So Bitcoin is separate from Bitcoin and crypto, but just following up on what you were saying there, I think this tweet here from Jameson Lopp is relevant. He says, now, by the way, Jameson Lopp, this guy is a Bitcoin OG of some kind. I think he may have even been involved with some of the like writing of the code or something, or whatever. Anyway,
yeah.
So he says nation state adoption is not playing out as I had expected. My assumption was that many tiny countries would adopt Bitcoin long before the US federal government felt compelled to do so. It seems I underestimated the virality of the sound money game. So that's kind of an interesting thing to have said from a sort of a Bitcoin royalty, I guess you could call him. Any thoughts on this?
I believe Jameson Lopp is also behind Casa, which was one of the early multi-sig self-custody Bitcoin wallets. And then I think they've also got some enterprise storage solutions. So he's done a lot of stuff in like the OG Bitcoin space, been around forever. Big proponent of BTC only. Everything else is garbage. But yeah, interesting guy.
Yeah. Actually, so last week we kind of did a breaking news podcast where we were discussing the U.S. Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Executive Order like minutes after it actually was signed. And I was just wondering if, having had a week to digest that news, if any of you had evolved opinions or different opinions or more nuanced takes on that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I also believed more small nations would be the ones to adopt early, because even going back to like 2018, when there was a lot of island nations that, had struggling, I don't know, fiat currencies, it seemed like a logical play for them to say, well, nobody trades our Eastern Caribbean dollar. Why don't we just, have a Bitcoin backed dollar or a crypto backed dollar or use crypto in some way? And there was all this talk of like these different micronations adopting things. And it just, that meta changed overnight here with, I'd say like pro Bitcoin administration talking heads moving into the Trump circle, and then also having Trump and the Trump family get involved in not just Bitcoin, but crypto in general. It seems to have kind of flipped on people, where now it's kind of the micronations sort of having to catch up or trying to perhaps front run the purchase of their own, say, Bitcoin strategic reserve to front run, Trump or the, the American purchase or acquisition, however they plan on acquiring this, whether that's through golden visas or residence cards or golden cards or whatever they're calling them. And yeah, I mean, it is strange. I mean, like, the other thing is, if the US is looking at this, then it forces every other major nation to also consider this. Like if they're going to be thinking, well, what does this mean for the US dollar hegemony, right? Like if the play here is China versus Russia versus US, by the US simply talking about a Bitcoin strategic reserve, they're forcing Putin to take a look at it. They're forcing Z to say, hey, what's up? Let's maybe, should we do this before them? Whether they do that or not remains to be seen, but it does kind of change the whole game theory where they're perhaps able to take positions at a much larger size and scale than previous cycles where we were thinking, oh, maybe it's going to be like Antigua and Barbuda that are going to be like, buying a few $1 million.
Is there a case to be made that because this two things? First of all, it's just an executive order; it's not an act of Congress, right? The Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. But secondly, that it comes from Trump, that therefore it's somehow not taken seriously around the rest of the world, right? Like if this executive, if it was a Biden or Kamala type administration who did this, the rest, is there a case to be made that the rest of the world would be like, oh yeah, this is for real?
I think it's actually the opposite. I think people take Trump more seriously than they would a Biden, Kamala lefty kind of a weak. It would be like a bullet point in a news update. But I think with Trump, he's kind of a wild card. So you have to take everything a little bit more serious because he's not afraid to move quick, it seems, especially in this administration where I think he's just trying to speed run everything. And I think he learned from the mistakes of the past administration where got bogged down with bureaucrats and, disloyal people. So, yeah, I mean, like, I think Trump is saying it actually makes it more serious where if you don't consider this, you could end up with, being caught with your pants down.
My take on this is that people, it's that classic line. What is it? People overestimate the impact in the short term and they underestimate it in the long term, right? Like, so we got this thing like a week ago, and then the markets didn't react how everyone thought they would, right? Kind of reminds me of the spot Bitcoin ETFs. I don't know if you remember that, but that got announced, and then it like dumped for like 2 weeks to a month, right? Mm-hmm. And everyone was like, "Oh, you see, it doesn't matter," and then it really did over the long term. And this is the same kind of thing to me, it's right. So like, yeah, the markets didn't pump immediately. There's some other stuff going on, but in the long term, like a year, 2, 3 years, this is probably going to have a major effect, and it makes sense if you think about it. So the U.S. finally comes out and says this, and yeah, whether they take it like more seriously or less seriously with Trump, the fact that the U.S. is like, this is now policy, it's going to take time for other nations to enact their own version of this. They can't just like turn the switch themselves, So yeah, it's to me, it's
interesting. And a follow up there is one thing I've been thinking about, and we've spoken about El Salvador and the IMF here on the pod. It seems that El Salvador is sort of being forced to not buy Bitcoin or not be as involved in Bitcoin as they were by the IMF. But now that Bitcoin is a strategic reserve asset in the United States, like, does the IMF have to change its policies, or for example, can a nation like El Salvador just be like, yeah, we're just not going to like adhere to that clause of the agreement, and the IMF is just going to have to be like, all right, fine, because of this like sort of sea change in what Bitcoin is globally.
Yeah, I mean, I think even before this happened, even if this hadn't happened, it just seemed like El Salvador was going to find a way to get around that stupid clause. So yeah, I never thought that was like a big thing. And I think the IMF is it's kind of like NATO. I feel like it's a little long in tooth. They're kind of being defanged, and not. They've lost so much prominence and importance. I mean, they still obviously has power, but I don't know. It's kind of an antiquated thing.
No, I think the other thing is that a lot of people, they blend their understanding of the government with like their understanding of money, and they think that the money is the government. And when we talk about fiat, a lot of people say the U.S. dollar, they're the U.S. government's currency, but it's not the U.S. government's currency. It's the private bank's currency. It's not. The Fed is not owned by the U.S. It's a private bank. It just has a great name, right? Bank of Canada, same thing. Bank of England, same thing. These are all private banks, so they don't necessarily have to do everything the government says. So it's always this like negotiation. And I think these, IMF type organizations, they're all kind of in these like, they're not part of the government. They're just ancillary to the bankers and to the the powers that be in that corrupt, sketchy world. And I mean, that part of the world, probably they're not so eager to have Bitcoin become a thing. They don't want Bitcoin and crypto to be a thing. Maybe some other private banks like, maybe like BlackRock, they seem to be a little bit more bullish towards, RWAs and Ethereum and Bitcoin, but they're not the ones that are like printing the money.
Also, I do think though, when we were at MENA last December, there were a lot of admittedly rumors, but from kind of higher up people in the region who were saying to me, and I'm sure to you guys too, like off the record, like the Middle East is buying Bitcoin, right? They're straight up buying it now. They haven't announced it, but they're doing it quietly, And so I can imagine that this kind of thing is probably happening in a lot of places. And if you're a government, why would you just announce that? Because then you're preventing yourself from being able to pick up Bitcoin at lower prices, right? So it doesn't even make sense, particularly to.
The reason to announce it is, like in the U.S.'s case, is it's political.
Yeah, exactly.
I promised it, and I did it, and there you go. Vote for me again.
Yeah, but for smaller economies where 16 billion or 100 billion is a lot of money, which it's not. It's not a lot of money. It's tiddlywinks, Lincoln logs. Yeah, you want to hide it because you're a little punk nation. But that's just me as an American.
I mean, MENA for sure, extremely bullish towards Bitcoin and crypto. Any of the conferences you go to, there is a stronger sentiment towards there versus you go to a Canadian Bitcoin or crypto conference. Vibes are weird, man. Still like it feels like 10 years behind relative to like Abu Dhabi and Dubai and things like that. So MGX as well just put a $2 billion investment into Binance. So
that's right.
Yeah, big money's flowing out there for Bitcoin, and be interesting to see how that one all plays out in the next 10 years.
On a side note, we have Frederick who lives in Toronto. We're sending him to 2 conferences in Canada in May with a videographer, and I'm excited to capture some of those weird vibes, Corbin. And we're definitely going to be like working with him to try to get him to ask questions about this. I can't wait. This big jacked guy to like start asking some like questions to these Canadian conference goers. It's going to be fun.
I think the other thing that's kind of interesting is when you go to some of these conferences in different nations, you'll see government officials attending. Whereas the Canadian ones are always like, you might get a couple like, the mayor, or you'll get like some like peon, but you're not getting like real decision makers. You're not getting Justin Trudeau with his, little femboy socks showing up to like talk about, Bitcoin and stuff like that.
Could you imagine? Imagine Trudeau at oh my God, that would be crazy.
Yeah.
Well, they're busy preparing for war right now in Canada, so
yeah. Orange man bad if you're Canadian right now. Don't drink the American whiskey, even though we already got it all on the shelves.
Yeah. You guys,
all right.
I heard on a podcast that Canada has a strategic national reserve of maple syrup. You guys are not going to make it, man. You guys are, you're just not a serious people.
We're really not. We control the supply of our dairy as well. It's been a contentious point for like the better part of 10 years that, you go to Canada, our cheese and dairy is just egregiously priced. Yeah. You go to America, I'm always surprised how cheap a cheddar block is. It's like, this is a sane price for a block of cheddar. Go to Canada, it's just, this is gold out here. It's mental.
All right. So let's zoom out a bit here. Two questions. Are we still in a bull market for Bitcoin and crypto? And two, is there anything in the current, given the current market environment, is there any obvious catalyst or news event that could trigger another run?
Well, I interviewed Arthur Hayes earlier this week, and
should we play the clip?
We can play the clip, but just to set this up, I was asking him that question: are we in a bull cycle still? And just for me personally, I already had my views before I talked to him, and it was really reassuring to me because basically everything he said I agreed with, right? Like, and so it was very reassuring for someone like Arthur Hayes, who I consider to be, a great trader, very, very, very knowledgeable about crypto and macroeconomics, to basically kind of like reaffirm a lot of the things of how I feel about like what's happening with the Trump administration and how they're approaching the economy. So anyway, that's all I would do to set that up.
Yep. And now that you have set it up, I have failed to get the actual tab here going right. Keep talking.
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, Arthur has been notoriously right about a lot of the trends in the Bitcoin price cycles, going back countless cycles. So if you were just copy trading Arthur, you'd probably be better off than trading fart coins and trying to take bets on Ethereum and trying to go it your own way. But if you can beat Arthur, great, go for it. But he's notoriously good at spotting the cycles and then understanding, I think like you said, the macro related to when the printers go on. And I think that's largely his take, is that easing is happening. Printing is going to happen. Things are going to go up. It's going to be fun, but kind of might be better to wait until the Fed says anything.
All right, I got the clip.
I absolutely still believe we're in a bull cycle. Obviously, the bull cycle has been a lot more concentrated in Bitcoin versus a lot of the other altcoin sphere. And at the end of the day, right now, we are experiencing a lull in liquidity fiat money generation in the United States. Obviously, I believe that Trump investors are consciously trying to cause a recession, or at least the appearance of a recession, so that the Federal Reserve becomes on their side and lowers the price of money and increases the quantity of money. And also, if you think about it, regardless of whether you think the political side of things, if there's a lot of fraudulent payments within the system and you want to get rid of those before you move higher, you can clean up the dead weight. And obviously that's going to have an economic impact. They're okay with it because they're doing it in the beginning of their administration versus in 2026 before the election. Oh no, let's go reform the entire government. The voting population is going to be very skeptical of that and say, oh, that's Trump's fault. That's Vessen's fault. That's Elon's fault, versus there's probably a way that they can spin this as this is Biden's fault. This is the Democrats' fault. Again, whether or not you believe that doesn't really matter, but the markets, they're cleaning out the dead wood, and then they're going to reflate and they're going to print more money than probably anyone's ever printed before. You move over to the EU, right? I don't know if the Greens are going to come on side with the ruling parties in Germany to do this constitutional fuckery to allow them to print as much money as possible to build weapons and rebuild their army. But If they don't do it this way, they'll do it another way. The sentiment is there. Europe wants to rearm, ostensibly to fight Russia, but they just want to spend more money at the end of the day. And so if it doesn't happen now, it'll happen later. They want you to reflate. It might not happen in the next week to save your leveraged long position in whatever you own, but that's coming at least within the next 2 to 3 years. China is just waiting. They're going to have some sort of agreement with the US and the rest of the world on how they want to reshape the global economy. Could be good, it could be bad. I don't know what it is. But once that agreement, or fuck you, we're just going to go our separate ways, whatever that is, they're going to reflate as well. So they're waiting in the sidelines. And then you have Japan, where the BOJ is trying to raise rates. We'll see if they get there or not. But at the end of the day, they're not trying to add more liquidity into the system. So you have the four major blocks either trying a bit of austerity to clean up the dead wood, or in the process of reflating their economies. I think in the third, fourth quarter of this year through 2028, we're going to have a massive money printing situation.
So again, I mean, what Corbin said is true, and I saw like in the past week or so, I saw several tweets from other traders and stuff talking about how Arthur Hayes is like a broken clock, right? Even a broken clock tells the correct time twice a day. So I mean, yeah. You take it with a grain of salt, but for me personally, it does kind of comport with how I think things are going to happen, and I think the U.S. is front loading the pain, and once America is forced to print money, it'll kind of give permission for the rest of the world, EU, China, Japan, to also start printing money, and then boom.
Did you have a chance to ask him about his $1 million Bitcoin prediction? Is he still saying 1 million BTC, or what? Any updates on that?
No, I didn't. I should have.
He famously made that prediction, I think was it last year or the year before? Right around when, might have been actually before Balaji was talking about that.
Did he give a time horizon for that?
I can't remember. Yeah, but it was a nice talking point for a little while there. Yeah.
Okay, so Arthur is saying short-term pain, long-term gain. Eventually, the money printing spigots are going to come on, and when they do, it's going to be blasting in your face like never before. Is there anything else we're missing here?
Well, my biggest question is: will the alts follow? Will the alts follow a print or a number go up situation? Because we know when the printer goes on, Bitcoin does well. But this cycle has been really strange for alts. And yeah, it does make me wonder, are we going to see the trend of them trading together, or is there some other decoupling related to alts and Bitcoin that could occur?
Yeah, my opinion on this is that some alts will, but unlike in previous cycles where everything went up because people hadn't been disillusioned by the vaporware 3 times in a row, or like for 3 consecutive cycles or whatever. Now, when liquidity does come in, it's not going to come into everything, obviously, right? We're going to actually have to build something that people want. And that will, whatever that asset is, if the tokenomics are right, will do well. And of course, there'll be a few other, like, whatever vaporware.
I think the RWAs have
with
to
the right
happen,
communities.
right? Like the RWAs, that seems to be the most likely situation where trading moves from being a 24/7 market. I mean, it just has to. Like it's capitally inefficient to have things only open and trading during your waking hours. And blockchain has solved that with Bitcoin. They've solved that with Ethereum. They've solved that with stablecoins. They've solved that with all the other.
But like, isn't that just gonna be on like a BlackRock chain or whatever? It'll be some permissioned chain, right?
Will it? I don't know. I mean, like we've seen a few other attempts at tokenizing stonks, right? There's been FTX had this for quite a while. Right. So yeah, for those of you guys who maybe missed the FTX drama, you were for a while able to trade Tesla and Apple and silver and you name it on FTX, and these were all tokenized representations of stocks
even
that
before that, Abra wallet did it.
Yeah.
Like synthetic versions of but they got shut down, right? Because
eventually they all got shut down. And I mean, this was also during a political climate when crypto wasn't popular. You had Dems in charge, you had anti-crypto Elizabeth Warren and all the crypto goons, basically saying we'll light up anyone who tries to, shake the market up. But that's gone now. So I feel like you just need someone brave enough to stick their neck out to continue to do this. And we are seeing some new players, enter the arena in with regards to real world assets. So like, I think it's going to happen. It's just, I think there's probably going to be some sort of permission chain that may do that, but it doesn't make sense to have the permission chain just given how like operationally inefficient it is. Like
because you want to tap into the global user base.
You want to tap into the existing liquidity that already exists in all across all the stable coins. Like it wouldn't make sense to have like, okay, you can buy Apple and Tesla and Amazon stocks only on Larry Fink's chain. And okay, but who's going to bridge their capital over to a permission network where potentially you just get rugged, or you now have to go through, I don't know, some sort of hardcore KYB to just access your funds again. In that case,
like what's the difference between that and what they already have, right? It's not, there's no meaningful difference. So that argument does make sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think BlackRock has talked about this, right? Like with their what's it called, Buildle thing. They were asked like, why did they do it on Ethereum? And basically it was that. It's like, well, we initially wanted to build our own thing, and I think we took steps to do that, but then we realized that was stupid, and it was much better to be, like as Corbin was saying, like part of a much bigger ecosystem. And there's no reason for us to kind of reinvent the wheel, but also limit ourselves in terms of liquidity.
I mean, I would just like to say, go
ahead.
Well, so I was just going to say it's them having to cede some control in order to make more money, which I think they're willing to do. Like they can make more money by ceding some control and letting the markets move, because they can trade when the markets go up and they can trade when the markets go down, and you can make money whether it's bullish or you can make money whether it's bearish, so long as there's sufficient liquidity in the markets to support your trading activities, your positions, and all your friends' positions, and all the politicians' positions, and Elizabeth Warren's position, whoever else, it's
And you get to do things like, for example, you can start to get into all those like esoteric financial instruments that are already in DeFi. Like, could you imagine if you tokenize stocks and then you have Aave pools or like yield aggregators that just automatically accept these different securities? I mean, you start to get into some awesome stuff like that.
Well, and then you can, I go down this hyper bullish case of if the DeFi degenerate nerds can solve under collateralized loans, that unlocks a whole new tool set for institutional traders to then start doing more things. So you could, right now it's very capitally inefficient to use Aave, right? Like you have to have a loan to value ratio of, I can't remember, like I think on a stable coin loan, it's like, I think they let you trade up to like 90-some%, which is pretty cool from like a stable to stable. But if you want to put in your Bitcoin and then borrow stable coins, I think it's like a max loan to value of like maybe 60% or 50% or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So like, if the tech can safely support putting in, say, $1 million of stable coins or $1 million of Bitcoin, and you don't need to have that loan to value ratio, you don't need to like have an over collateralized loan. You can say, put in $1 million and borrow $2 million, or put in $1 million and borrow $3 million. Then you can start kind of doing your own, doing the same chaos that they do in the traditional markets, which is what they know. This is the strategies they know. So they want to use the same strategies they know on chain in a 24/7 market to make more money. And yeah, I think if those tools exist, you'll see more inflows, you'll see more interest, you'll see more ceding of control in order to make more money.
Yep, I agree. I just want to say one thing on this the question that Graham, that you raised about altcoins. I think, and I've said this before, but new retail hasn't come in to this cycle yet, really. And so,
to a small extent, only
very small extent, and it's not just like we're a crypto company. I'm in the news.bitcoin.com. Corbin is the CEO of Bitcoin.com. So we get to see a lot of data that is not available to the public, and it shows that a lot of the numbers behind it show that really there aren't a lot of new entrants, right? People who've already existed in the space, and I think that if you get, like, let's say Hayes is right, and you get like a giant money printing, the likes that you haven't seen in many, many years, maybe ever, I think that will do what it did last time, which is bring in a lot of new people into crypto. And I think if that happens, then you will see kind of like a everything pumps kind of thing again. But maybe that won't happen this time, right? Maybe this cycle we won't get like a huge number of new users.
There is a case to be made that it won't, because we broke all-time highs. We broke $100,000 on Bitcoin, a huge headline number, and people didn't stream in as they did in past cycles. And my theory is it's because they already got burnt so bad on all this stupid stuff. And this time, the people who did come in, they got burnt bad again.
Institutions. It was all institutions.
Memes. Right. But okay, so the first time around, people got burnt bad on ICOs. Then they got burnt on Axie Infinity and NFTs, dumb stuff. And then this time they got burnt on 99% of people losing money on meme coins, where it was totally rigged against them. And so I just think that the eligible pool of people who might want to come into this and play this game is getting smaller because of the scams and just like the sentiment of what this crypto thing is so bad that it limits the pool.
So I have an opinion, but I think it's skewed by my Canadianness. I know a lot of people in Canada, and everyone's broke, man. I part of me wonders if the macro was perhaps more bullish, then you'd have more people taking stupid bets on Bitcoin and crypto. But people are just trying to, pay their mortgage, struggling with that. They've had mortgage rates go up. They've had cost of goods go up. Yeah,
eggs are so expensive.
Average household debt in Canada is $75,000, not
everyone's
including
underwater.
your
They're all
mortgage.
Good God.
Yeah. So Canada's maybe an extreme example, but the US probably not faring a whole lot better. They're complaining about egg prices and all the other nonsense. So if your biggest worry is the cost of eggs, then you're probably not thinking man, I got to get some money in that Bitcoin. That's what I need.
Got to get fart coin, man. When this is where I gotta.
So I think if the macro improves, if say the market overall starts getting more juiced up.
I'm gonna finish what Corbin was gonna say, but yeah, if the macro improves. Oh, there. You back, Corbin? Not back. But I agree. If the macro improves, i.e., if we get a crap ton of money printing later in the year, then we might see taxi drivers and Uber drivers pile back in to our fart coins and stuff.
All right. We got we're almost at the hour here. David, you had on the doc that you wanted to go on a tariff rant. Do you want to still do that here, or
I could do it a little bit. I could do it a little bit. Just and the past week, specifically in the past week, but it's been about 2 weeks. A lot of people on crypto Twitter and in like some of the podcasts I've listened to have kind of talked about, I think, what Trump's doing with tariffs and getting all. A lot of them are not Americans. Some are get all upset that we're doing tariffs and how tariffs are bad. And I think that there are two things here. Number one, it's because price is not great, and so people want to find some culprit for that. They're complaining that it's tariffs, and then like just a lot of the talk about tariffs revolves around how America's being unfair and that we're attacking our allies and all this kind of crap. And I just really want to point people to Michael Pettis. This guy is amazing. I've talked about him before, but he goes into like what's it called, global trade a lot, specifically towards China, but all global trade. And I highly recommend anybody to really who's interested in this and wants to learn to go and look at what he says. And I'll just make 2 points to keep it short, so I don't want to go on a full rant. But number one is that if you're a country who doesn't have who's very like has a very open market, right? And you want to say things like America doesn't want to be a bully. We want to have open trade and we don't want to have tariffs because it's bad. Basically, and then you have a country like China, for example, who has an iron grip on their trade policy. What this does is it doesn't mean that America has an open trade policy. What it means is America's trade policy is dictated by China, which means that America's trade policy is decided by some Chinese guy in China, right? That's not good. I mean, you're ceding your trade policies to some foreigner. So fine, maybe you don't agree with tariffs, but man, China's trade policy and all a tariff is a specific version of like trade intervention, right? It's just a form of controlling how things flow in and out of your country. And China's is ridiculous. Like they have the most insane, thorough, top to bottom societal trade intervention policy probably in the world, right? And all America is trying to do, maybe ineptly, you can agree or disagree with whether tariffs are a good idea or not, is basically deciding that we don't want some Chinese guy determining America's trade policy. And that's it. It's quite simple, and it's just like a very basic fact that if you sit there and twiddle your fingers and do nothing, the other guy is going to determine what your country's trade policy is. So that's one issue with it, and then just the other one is China's trade policy. China's trade policy is terrible. It's terrible for everyone in the world, including China, right? So something should be done. Absolutely. Whether you believe in tariffs or not, something should be done. Michael Pettis talks about this a lot. He's talked about it for years. He calls it a beggar thy neighbor trade policy. And it's, I'm going to try not to use curse words, but it's basically, it's destroying China's ability to be kind of an economic powerhouse. And it's also destroying America's. And it's like net negative for the world. So anyway, all these people who are butthurt about these tariffs and stuff, I get some of the sentiment, but something has to be done. And I would say personally, having tariffs, or at least like posturing of tariffs, is a step in the right direction. So that's it.
Nice rant. All right. Unless Corbin has something to respond to there, I think.
No, I mean, the only other thing I'd add to that is that there's a lot of allegories here with some of the discussion we saw on X related to the high trust societies and how it doesn't take much. All it takes is like a few small bad actors to kind of erode the high trust. And I think that's kind of what this is happening. It applies to an economic level as well. You get a few bad actors and it muddies the whole thing. And if everyone's being high trust and then you got a couple assholes in the mix, kind of erodes the trust. And I think all that's happening is there's sort of a realignment of incentives, and perhaps that also needs to occur across some of these Western nations, which are just getting their high trust societies eroded by the third world.
Amen. Amen.
All right. Let's wrap it up, gentlemen. Thank you for your highly insightful insights and hot takes. And thanks to everyone for joining. We will see you next week on Bitcoin.com's Token Narratives.